a niche is a particular role that an organism has within its environment. So the kind of things that involves is how it obtains its resources from that environment. So what it eats, what eats it, and the habitat that it occupies. How it impacts other living things. So again, that ties in with its feeding relationships. So what it is in competition with, or what it's eating, and how it impacts those living things, and how it modifies its environment. So some species in particular, like corals, can create coral reefs, beavers can create dams, elephants can knock down trees, deer can impact the regrowth of the forest within an area. So all these animals are an example of ecosystem engineers. They all impact their environments by somehow modifying the other living things or structural things that provide a habitat for other living things in the environment. The other thing that's quite key as far as niche goes is being a keystone species. So all living things will impact other living things within their ecosystem due to changing feeding relationships. So for example, if you get more caterpillars in a tree, that will increase the abundance of birds that are feeding on those caterpillars, and therefore cats and stoats that are feeding on those birds. So the changing in the abundance of caterpillars has a downstream trophic cascade in how it impacts the other living things within its environment. And that becomes even greater in a keystone species. So a keystone species is one where its impact upon the environment has a dramatic impact on all of the other species within the environment. So some keystone species are the ecosystem engineers, so like an elephant. So the abundance and movement of elephants, for example, has a big impact on the regrowth of a forest in an area. In a similar way, deer can have a big impact on the regrowth of forest in an area. Wolves can impact the movement of deer, so therefore the regrowth of forest in that area, and therefore the species that occupy that forest, so they can have this big downstream impact. And probably the greatest example of a keystone species is ourselves. So we have a great impact on our environments, and we can change ecosystems in various different ways. And in a way, that's the whole idea and philosophy behind creating a regenerative and resilient organic agricultural system, is to try to create this habitat where we can get the resources that we need to support ourselves, but also provide a home and a habitat for other living things, particularly the native wildlife of that region. So it's trying to fit in our own habitat that provides our resource with the habitat of natural systems. And by doing that, creating an overall patchwork of habitats within a particular location that allows for the healthy function of natural ecosystems and the movement of wildlife throughout those patches in the landscape. So trying to obtain a method of land use that respects the diversity of life that inhabits that area, and fits our own impact on that landscape and our own acquisition of resources from that landscape in harmony with the other living things that are in that landscape. So that's a key idea behind the intention behind the design of a regenerative farmscape.